We are live.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Congo Week. My name is Jocelyn. I'm the founder of African Diaspora Network, a platform that provides African centered leadership through guidance, cultural exchange, resource mobilization, and advocacy. So, just to give a background about Congo Week,
Hello, Jessica. Are you there? Is it my? Is it my computer?
each year on the third week of October to screen movies, hold teach-ins and forums, organize rallies, host fundraisers and forums, or concerts. Basically, any activities to elevate the profile of Congo through the globe. Students and community organizers initiated Congo Week in 2008. Religious leaders, scholars, intellectuals, artists, and ordinary people throughout the globe also got involved to acknowledge the lives of Congolese people and their pursuit of human dignity. As a Congolese myself, I am so honored to be a part of these organized events in collaboration with Friends of Congo. So today's event is going to be discussing Congo from Leopold to Trump, a history of peace deals in the DRC from the Berlin conference to the Washington, D.C. deal that happened this year. We will have speakers Kambale Musavuli, who is a Congolese human rights advocate, writer, and national spokesman for Friends of Congo. And we'll also have Claude Gatebuke, who's a Rwandan genocide survivor and human rights advocate. We will have three sessions, basically discussing the first one will be from Berlin Conference to the Cold War, so from 1884 to 1990s. And then we will have segment two discussing the peace deal, the peace agreement era from 2013 to 2025. And then we will also go into segment three, which is the 2025 Washington Agreement and the escalation of violence. And finally, we will have segment four, which will be our closing reflections. Just to get into the background of each segment. So from 1884 to 85, the Berlin Conference gave King Leopold, who was the Belgian king at the time, personal control in the Congo Free State. So unfortunately, it wasn't given, right? There was no consent. So this was followed by the Belgian colonization and Cold War interference after independence in 1960. Today's crisis cannot be understood without tracing this legacy of resource plunder, international complicity, and foreign military intervention. So the key context we'll draw on are, again, as we mentioned, King Leopold's Congo Free State, where over 10 million Congolese died under a brutal extractive regime from 1885 to 1908. Then we'll discuss Congo under the Belgian colonization, which is the continued labor and economic exploitation. Then we'll discuss the post-independent assassination of our liberation leader Patrice Lumumba and first prime minister, and Cold War destabilization. Then also we'll discuss the West's long-standing interest in Congolese minerals and refusal to support true sovereignty. And then our second session will discuss how the past decade has seen so many peace initiatives like the Addis Ababa framework in 2013, the Luanda process, Nairobi talks, the Doha Qatar mediation this year, and the Dar es Salaam summit in February of 2025. While each attempted to address rebel violence and foreign interference in the East, they have struggled with implementation, transparency, and justice. The key context to draw on in this segment would be the Addis Ababa framework, which promised structural reforms, regional non-interference, and disarmament, backed by the UN, the AU, the SADC, ICGLR, and included civil society and monitoring mechanisms, but largely was unfulfilled. The Luanda process, after that, was mediated by Angola, which focused on neutralizing M23, which is the current rebel group that is destabilizing the Eastern Congo, backed by Rwanda and foreign powers, and FDLR. Disagreements over troop withdrawals, and regional actors like Uganda and Burundi were excluded. Was a part of this discussion of exclusion. Then we'll talk about the Nairobi talks, which was led by Kenya and the EAC, that emphasized economic integration and military training, which unfortunately was undermined by poor communication, leadership change, and accusations of economic overreach. Then we'll move on to the Doha process, which was in 2025, mediated by Qatar, which direct talks between DRC and M23, where a ceasefire was agreed in April, but quickly broken, of course. Talks mirrored in technical difficulty, disputes, and confidence building disagreements. And then we'll discuss the Dar es Salaam summit, February 2025, which called for ceasefire again and merged the Luanda and Nairobi processes, and created the AU, EAC, and SADC coordination mechanism and security plan for Goma. But unfortunately, once again, fighting has continued despite these mechanisms. And then we'll finally discuss the 2025 Washington Agreement and the escalation. And again, which is the current agreement, which of course has been broken. So we look forward to diving in with the questions, and seeing, how our human rights activists, what are their thoughts, and how we, the global community, and especially the diaspora, can really continue raising awareness, and mobilize, right? Because at the end of the day, nobody's coming to save us, as we have seen, but with the evidence of these agreements that are, many of them not done within the actual country that is being destabilized, which is the Congo. So we look forward to having our speakers. Let's see here. We're still waiting.
Yes, we're still waiting for them. Well, I just interrupt and tell you, first off, thank you for taking this time to have this teach-in. My name is Keita. I'm with Friends of the Congo, and as she stated, it's about Congo Week and its importance, and what we are working to do by spreading the awareness to the global community. I did post right here. You can see friendsofthecongo.org/primer. I actually went ahead and used that today for my students this morning. It gives a very good background, easy digestible for those student age children who need to get a glimpse of what took place in the Congo and why the Congo is important to all of us, how we are connected. So looking forward to having our guest on. But as we wait, we can look for questions and answer questions. But this is a week long teaching, and we hope that you all are continue to tune in and support and wait for those item actions, so that we can help our Congolese brothers. Because once we help our Congolese brothers and sisters, we are helping ourselves. We are helping ourselves. So
yes, I couldn't agree more. And we can go into also the thematic schedule for Congo Week for those, just as we wait for our guests. So today, on Sunday, there was the theme was interfaith prayer for peace in Congo. So this was a prayer visual. Calling the action was to host an event to call for peace in Congo and all faiths. We called on faith leaders to dedicate the Day of Peace in Congo. Then Monday is Congo's history, which is today. We host teach-ins. We, have local schools, libraries, college, university to include books that were proposed on the website. One of the books that was proposed was Congo White King, Red Rubber, Black Death. Sorry, that was background noise. Also, some recommended readings, additional recommended readings were Congo from Leopold to Kabila, A People's History by George Nzongola Ntalaha. And then we have King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. I have a hard time pronouncing that.
For sure.
Then we have King Leopold's Soliloquy by Mark Twain, Red Rubber by E.D. Morel, The Rise and Decline of the Zairean States by Crawford Young and Thomas Turner. So, if people do not know, Zaire was the name of Congo that was changed again when Mobutu took over, who was the first, uh, not the second president, dictator. Then we have Congo, The Epic History of a People by David Van Raybrook. Again, there's more books on congoweek.org. Please, if you want to be involved, if you want to read these books, this is how you get educated on what's going on in Congo. Please go to congoweek.org. And now,
Yeah.
mhm,
I was gonna say yes. You could also get the calendar on
mhm,
CongoWeek.org. You can see all the events that are taking place. We had a very nice kickoff down the Atlanta this weekend.
mhm,
Brother Gaetan Zowo, who does the Congo Unfiltered, as you can see on this platform, he came into town and we connected at Georgia Tech. We connected at Morehouse College, and then the Shrine of the Black Madonna, First African Church, of course, the radio stations. We had a pretty impactful weekend. Also, some movie screenings on the Congo crisis in the Congo, um, along with conversation. So we had so stay tuned to what's on the calendar.
mhm,
If there are in-person events, please go ahead. You're doing yourself a service by going to listen and getting this information. Like we said, I can't stress enough how what happens in the Congo directly affects you. Um, and we won't be free until everyone is free. And
mhm.
trust me when I say whatever happens in the Congo is directly happening here. So please pay attention and stay tuned. Yeah.
Thank you, Tito. Yes, so on Tuesday, we have our theme will be the ideas and teachings of Patrice Lumumba, which is the great Congolese Pan Africanist liberator. He is our MLK. Well, more like, I think more Malcolm X, but we are that is going to focus mostly on um, just understanding his ideas as we mentioned, and then there's some recommended readings as well. But welcome, Claude.
Thank you for having me. Apologize for the delay getting on. I was following the conversation. Um, as you guys started, I just wasn't able to get connected as quickly as I needed. And good seeing you, Keto. Um,
Seeing you too, bro.
Glad to hear about what went down in Atlanta.
Oh yes.
Jessica just spoke about, you know, Lumumba being the MLK
Mhm.
um, of Congo. The last time, well, not the last time because I've been to Atlanta since, but the right before COVID, I actually was in an event at Morehouse College in the King's building,
Hmm.
Mm.
MLK building, and the event was on MLK weekend, which is also Lumumba Day,
Right.
Mm.
and they usually coincide or are really close. And yeah, the event was about the both of them, and it was a very powerful event. One of the last large crowded events that I was part of before COVID. You know, we've had some other large ones since, but that was definitely a memorable one because then soon after that, less than 2 months after that, everything shut down.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, those, it makes sense. I don't know why we don't link them more often. Link their struggle. I mean, obviously, they're the movements and just the similarities between the two of them. Um, but okay, well, while we wait for Kambale, we can jump into questions if you're ready, Claude.
Yes, I'm ready. Some of them might be suited for Kambale, but I will do my best for
Mhm.
to answer or defer to when Kambale gets in.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I mean, these questions are very much tailored to both the viewers' professional background and experience, and just overall advocacy. So no worries at all. I introduced you. I introduced you, but like I already shared with the viewers your professional background and just yeah your experience. But please, um, it's better coming from you. So we would love to hear from you. In case people
Yeah,
don't know you.
yeah. My background. How did I get into the Congo? Basically, my story with the Congo actually started with the Rwandan genocide. Let me, if you guys give me just a quick second so I can promote this live event.
Mhm.
Um, one quick second.
Mhm.
Yeah, my story starts with being in Rwanda during my childhood. There was a war.
Mhm.
That war was much like what is happening in the Congo today. People being, and the players are the same.
Mhm.
That's, I think, the important part here is what is happening in the Congo. I hear a lot of times folks referring to what is happening as, oh, this, it has its background in Rwandan genocide.
Mhm.
That's that's not entirely, where it starts. It
Mhm.
starts way before the genocide in Rwanda. It actually starts way back in the 80s, early
Mhm.
80s, when Yoweri Museveni lost an election in Uganda,
Mhm.
started a war, a rebellion, and during that war, he recruited Rwandan exiles, including Paul Kagame and many others,
Mhm.
and many were child soldiers, in fact, when he recruited them. Those same soldiers formed what is known as the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front,
Mhm.
which then invaded Rwanda in 1990, and then Paul Kagame led them to victory. And that war culminated into the Rwandan genocide. Um, and then the Rwandan genocide, the war itself, as it is right now in the Congo, the ongoing genocide in the Congo, that's displaced millions of people. That war in Rwanda had also displaced 1 million people out of 8 million. So 1 out of 8 people, every eighth person that you see was a displaced person inside of Rwanda. Then the displacement continued when, as the RPF kept taking over and pushed everybody into the Congo.
Mhm.
Some went to Tanzania, but the majority of people went to Congo. Then 2 years later, Rwanda and Uganda invaded Congo. Remember, the invasion of Rwanda started in Uganda.
Mhm.
Rwanda and Uganda invaded Congo with the pretext of going after those who committed genocide
Mhm.
in Rwanda. By the way, they left behind Paul Kagame, who actually started the genocide by shooting down the plane carrying Rwanda's president then. And then the story continues. They massacred the refugees in those refugee camps, much like what we've seen in the Congo in recent times.
Mhm.
Same methods, same exact methods. It was the same group of people with a cover of, some Congolese that were mixed with them. And then over time, they just kept changing the acronyms of what their names are. And right now, we're at the M23, which is morphing into the AFC. And
Mhm.
eventually, there will be an M25 and M20, 7, whatever,
Mhm.
just to cover up the fact that what is happening is an invasion of by Rwanda and Uganda into the Congo with the support of the US, the UK, the European Union,
Mhm.
and many countries, in fact, that often come off as peaceful or neutral nations. So my story starts there, but really, I didn't start connecting and sharing and doing this work on the Congo until I read the book of Frederick Douglass, who inspired me. Seeing his story of a young boy sold into slavery, had no resources, eventually freed himself, and was a major contributor to the abolition of slavery, one of the most evil systems that existed in human history, and one of the most profitable too. And he inspired me to start speaking. And as I started speaking, um, the story of Congo was prominent because millions of people were being butchered by especially Rwandans and Ugandans. Women's privates were being amputated, child soldiers were being recruited, and it was just a horrible, horrible way for humans to live. And I knew what that experience was like, um, having been a child in a war and a genocide. I knew that somebody needed to speak up, and those of us who survived would be betraying the memory of those who didn't make it if we didn't speak up. So that's how I come into the story of the Congo, and then eventually connected with Friends of the Congo. Initially, at first, connecting with Kambale, and then the rest of the Friends of the Congo, and was part of many of the Break the Silence tours, which I love the work that was done then because nobody was talking about the Congo, in spite of millions and millions of people having been butchered, having lost their lives, and mostly children. It was just not a tragedy, but it was like um, an intentional way to 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 kill people and profit from the killings of those people. So that's how I came, through it. And I guess if it's not clear to anyone, I am Rwandan. I was born in Rwanda, uh, but I also recognize that Rwanda is one of the major, Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni are the mercenaries of the West in Central Africa, Central and East Africa, and the invasion of Congo today is led by the two of them, and it's disguised as the M23. And so part of what I'm wanting to do is really just um, make sure the world is aware, and also make sure that it's clear what is happening is an invasion. It's not a rebel group that is supported by. It is an invasion of Congo that is under the guise of a Congolese rebellion. Um, and so, my background is human rights activism, a lot of work focusing on anti-genocide and genocide prevention and mass atrocities, and especially accountability and justice. And our organization, the African Great Lakes Action Network, our whole um, goal and mission is to see and bring about peace, justice, and accountability in the region. And we are of the belief that lasting peace, the foundation for lasting peace, is justice. And the foundation for justice is the truth. And once there is lasting peace, then the region can thrive. But we want to see the people of the region determine their own affairs.
Thank you so much for providing that background and your personal story and what inspired you. I think it's so important as we do this work, right? We kind of get caught up at times in, especially in the frustration of it all. I relate to you as a Congolese. I've lived through, two of the Congo wars, right? And seeing just so much trauma, experiencing trauma, bodies burning. You just never, it stays with you, and it never, it goes away. And some people choose to completely numb themselves. And, when we get here, especially the diaspora, we just look away and just don't want to relive that, understandably. And then some of us are driven by those experiences and wanting to make a difference. So it's really an honor to meet you and to connect with you, during these discussions and share your work. You have new audiences that are learning, right? And so you have to constantly. It's really important to provide context, and so. And also, let's just to add for folks, as you mentioned, the actors that are involved, the foreign actors involved. That also includes the UAE. It's and in support of Rwanda too. So I know a lot of us focus on just like the West, but it's been a global a free for all, right? Where just they're just coming in, destabilizing, and of course with the account the complicity of the government, right? So yeah, going to just the first question for you. As we discussed, Rwanda and other neighboring countries were also shaped by colonial border making. So how, I know you talked about it a little bit, but like, how do you think these artificial borders continue to fuel today's conflict in the Great Lakes region?
I think I have a really hard time referring to what is happening in the Congo as a conflict. There is an ongoing genocide in the Congo,
Yeah.
and this genocide is being perpetrated by two countries that invaded the Congo, Rwanda and Uganda. And in order to have those, they are there because of those artificial borders is how Rwanda is defined and Congo is defined and Uganda is defined. Um, and so the borders alone. So one, I mean, in recent times we've heard, Paul Kagame say that the Congo needs to return old territories that were Rwandan uh, territories prior to colonial borders being drawn up. I didn't hear him talk about the parts that are now part of Tanzania or parts that are now part of Uganda. Um, but in any case, these colonial borders are a serious issue. Um, I personally think it would be um, best to not have these borders. First of all, because already the borders are porous. You have people inside of um, Congo, inside of Rwanda, inside of Uganda, just that triangle of the borders where you basically may have one family inside of each one of those borders, and they are just historically, that's where they've been. You have that also on the triangle of Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania, for example. Burundi, same thing. I'm sure Congo has nine borders, I think, or eight or nine borders. Each one of those, there are people who have family on either side. So first of all, that just the way that that was cut up was problematic. But today, it's also used as a way to easily define and hire mercenaries by these global players. Especially the West, even though I know, yes, the UAE is definitely involved. And obviously, Rwanda's doing this Visit Rwanda campaign, usually with the Emirates supported clubs. It's not a coincidence. Rwanda Air is, you know, um, is owned partially by the Emirates. So there are many things that overlap, but what these borders have actually served to do, especially, is to provide a way for the US and the UK and the EU to go and hire their mercenaries, Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni, um, in Rwanda and Uganda, and have that defined border and say, now your mission is to go into the Congo, take over these territories, and plunder on behalf of our multinational companies. It also allows for some of these disputed conflicts where, for example, Rwanda, the very irony of in Rwanda, people are not allowed to refer to themselves as Hutus and Tutsis and Twas. Yet, Rwanda goes, invades the Congo,
Mm.
calls themselves the M23, and they say that they're fighting for the rights of Congolese Tutsis. Um, when in Rwanda, they don't even recognize these, labels of, these ethnicities of Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa. By the way, when it's convenient, they will also use it for their own narrative, their own well-crafted narrative of the genocide, that which doesn't always reflect reality. And they'll say what happened in Rwanda is genocide against the Tutsi, knowing full well, first of all, that yes, there were a lot, thousands, hundreds of thousands of Tutsis were killed in that genocide. There were also hundreds of thousands of Hutus who were killed in that genocide. Now we know also that Paul Kagame's soldiers were mixed in with the militias that were committing that genocide. And also, we know now that Paul Kagame ordered the shooting of the plane, which was the first murder in the genocide in Rwanda, and that that terror attack actually killed two Hutu presidents, the whole crew on the plane, and over a dozen other people that were on. There were over a dozen people who were on that plane that all died when they shot the plane, and that's how they started. That's how they started that genocide, and they call it now the genocide against the Tutsi instead of the Rwandan genocide. And they go to Congo and they manufacture this narrative about Congolese Tutsis being hunted down. I mean, it's gotten as ridiculous as in recent times. There was, I'm not sure if a person was killed or happened to die or was attacked that is a Maasai. And now, and then they started claiming that Maasais are now being, pursued in Congo, and that is genocidal crimes. So Rwanda says they're gonna go stop a genocide of a people that they don't even recognize that ethnic group exists inside of Rwanda, which is where a lot of Tutsi and Hutu people are, Rwanda, Burundi, and then yes, in surrounding countries, they may not even be referred to as Hutus and Tutsis. But that also shows the origin goes still back on these artificial borders. You have some ethno-fascist leaders like Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni. We've seen Yoweri Museveni's son referring to the Rwandan Tutsis as their sisters and brothers. They are Himas in Uganda, and that's what he refers to them as. And he also says that they're related to the people in Tigray in Ethiopia. All of that, again, these ethno-fascist leaders are protected by the fact that they are presidents of these um, countries that were carved out as part of the colonial borders, and they enjoy impunity as heads of state. In 2010 and 2011, we filed two lawsuits against Paul Kagame in the US, and he was granted diplomatic immunity by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama when these cases were going in front of the judges. And so the cases did not proceed, and that immunity was immunity that even a U.S. president cannot get, because this was a lawsuit about crimes that Kagame committed before he was president. The ones that he's committed since he was president, he may have immunity as a president, but the ones that he committed before, those are those do not they don't normally get immunity. Like a president, a U.S. president, if they committed a crime before they were president, they could be persecuted for it. But they give Kagame that kind of impunity. So I say it a lot to answer that question on colonial borders, but the bottom line is it makes it those colonial borders make it easy to hire these mercenaries to go and destabilize and occupy and take over territories of their neighbors.
No, thank you for that comprehensive overview. And yeah, I agree. When you look at the history, unfortunately, Rwanda actually It's been the opposite, right? Like the Gisenyi area was, they actually got more. If you look at the documents, the colonial documents, they actually got more territory from the Congo Empire. Now they've been arguing, the opposite, right? Yeah, documentation is there, and I'm happy to share with folks that are interested. Just going back to personal experiences of just the impact of these borders, right? Could you share your experience in the Rwandan dealing, during the Rwandan genocide? Whatever you're comfortable with. I know it's
Yeah.
very full.
Yeah. So in like I said before, the Rwandan genocide was not a standalone event or even something that just happened out of the blue. A lot of people, again, which is why I even started out saying there is a tendency to say that the what is happening in the Congo, the ongoing genocide in the Congo, is um, has its roots in the Rwandan genocide. Is a little bit is starting like in the middle of actually that history, but um, the genocide in Rwanda also, a lot of people think that a genocide out of the blue, some the Hutu people decided to just go out and start killing Tutsi people, and then all of a sudden Paul Kagame formed this army out of heaven called the RPF, and they just came, stopped the genocide, and took over and became, started leading Rwanda. That's not what happened. Um, it starts from the history, as you were talking about, of colonialism. Actually, even before pre-colonial Rwanda, where you had a dynasty, a family, basically that ruled the country, and this family, it was a handover of power from father to son, son to grandson, grandson to great grandson, and then in some cases brothers if the king didn't have other children. Sorry, if the king didn't have a son. So what happened with the when colonialism started, or before colonialism started, this family actually has subjugated um, Hutus and poor Tutsis and Twas, and had them in doing forced labor, unpaid labor, basically had them enslaved. Then the Belgians came. No, the Germans came first. Then the Belgians lost their colonies after World War One, and Rwanda became a Belgian colony. When the colonialists came, they found an organized society that was already divided enough to allow them to rule. So that divide and rule worked out for them, uh, you know, perfectly, because society was already set up that way. So what ended up happening is in 1933, the Belgians then formalized ethnicity. Before that, there was some social mobility where somebody could go from Hutu to Tutsi or demoted from Tutsi to Hutu, but still that one family ruled. Their one family and their close allies ruled the country or the kingdom. So in 33, they issued identity cards. In 1959, there was a revolution by Hutus and poor Tutsis, who then took over. I mean, they kicked out the king, and that led also to independence, and Rwanda became a republic. And during that revolution is when Paul Kagame fled Rwanda with his parents. And for 30 years, they were in exile. And in 1990, they started the war that I referred to from the beginning. When they came, this was a predominantly Tutsi rebel group that came from Uganda and a bunch of other places, including Congo and Burundi, where, Tanzania and all over the world. They recruited people from everywhere, even inside of Rwanda. So then they started this war. They committed all these atrocities. I mean, they would pull people into stadiums and surround them and throw grenades into the crowds, and they will finish people off with hand weapons, like old, small hoes, gardening hoes, and hammers and things like that. The type of atrocities that we're seeing in the Congo today, the tying up of people's elbows behind their backs. That's a technique they started in Uganda. They would tie people up with, their hands behind their back and bash their heads in with hammers or small hoes into mass graves. Remember, the mapping report for the Congo was started because they found mass graves. They were doing that in Rwanda to before this is way before the genocide. So as I said, it displaced over 1 million people. 1 out of 8 Rwandans was displaced by the year of 1993. They started terror attacks in bus stations, in markets, in places like that. They would just set off all these explosives that would kill a bunch of people. Um, Crime was the usual crime now was being committed with arms, war weapons, and before by the year 1993, there was a peace deal. So we're talking about peace deals today. There were actually peace deals in the Ugandan war too. Same exact playbook that is happening today. Um, there was a peace deal between the government of Rwanda, which was predominantly Hutu, and the RPF rebels, Paul Kagame, the Tutsi rebels. They signed the peace deal, agreed that the rebels will bring some of their soldiers into the country, much like what we've been seeing in the Congo, where people get amnesty and they're brought into the regular army. Then, when they came into the city to the purpose was for them to assure security for the rebels politicians instead of basically staying within the what was agreed on. They started exfiltrating, sending those soldiers out of the place where they were staying into the community, and then bringing more recruits into the place. It was the parliament building where they were housed, and they would bring more troops from the northern part of Rwanda that they occupied. And so by the time, like months later, they had thousands of troops inside of the city of Kigali. And at the end of March of 1994, Paul Kagame chaired a meeting. And I know this because in this book, Survivors Uncensored, which I'm a co author of, in this book, um, I've had conversations with two of Paul Kagame's former bodyguards. One of them was actually in that meeting, Alois Rienzi, and he said that he names the names of the officers who were part of it. Paul Kagame was the chair. There was Kayumba Nyamwasa. There was Jacob Tumwine, and a few others. One named Colonel Lizinde, who actually was a former soldier in the um, in the Hutu government, but had joined the RPF when he basically ended up in prison, and the RPF took over a town. They opened the prison, and they recruited him. He pulled out a map, and he showed him where to set the weapons to shoot the plane with the plane landing in Rwanda. This is from Alois Rienzi in this book, Survivors Uncensored. So um, on April 6th, this is about a week later, on April 6, 1994, that's when the first act of the Rwandan genocide that I talked about, the shooting of the presidential plane, that presidential plane that was carrying the Rwanda's Hutu president, Burundi's Hutu president, number of government officials, and the crew all were killed in that attack. And now we know that Paul Kagame ordered that. After that, we started hearing bombings, like shelling all over the city, all over the place. And the shelling that we were hearing was by the RPF. They were armed with shells. They had this heavy weaponry. and they were shelling the city of Kigali to basically flush the population out so they can take it over. And I mean, things were like we heard, I mean, all of these explosions from one side whistling over our heads, and boom, and exploding on the other side. People were screaming and crying for help. Dogs were barking. Animals were making noise. I mean, things were crumbling all over the place. I was so scared. My stomach was bubbling. I was shaking. And then eventually I became numb. It was me, my sisters, my two sisters, and my mother in the house. And I remember actually when my mother, before all of this started, like the shootings and stuff, my mother answered a phone call, and then she told us, "Oh, those two explosions that we just heard, it was the president's plane that just got shot." My reaction was, "Oh, I hope the president didn't get killed, because if he got killed, we won't be able to finish our soccer tournament." That was my worry as a child. And my sister's like, "Oh, Claude, you're so stupid. You're thinking about soccer and you don't realize, the last time like high ranking politicians were killed, which a lot of those were happening, assassinations, schools were shut down. Like we couldn't go anywhere, with so many riots in the country."
Wow.
So now you have all that shelling, you have the shootings, you have the massacres that have been happening over the last 3.5 years. Now the next thing that started was now extremist Hutu gangs and militias basically started going from house to house looking for Tutsis and killing them. And they killed them with hand weapons, with machetes and clubs and things like that. And We went into hiding. We ended up getting smuggled out of our house by neighbors after some days of hiding and hearing people inside of our house looking for us. They took us to another neighbor's place that we sheltered in, and a lot of people who survived the genocide, they survived because of their Hutu neighbors who actually sheltered them. Similar to, if anybody's seen the film Hotel Rwanda with Paul Rusesabagina, that was Don Cheadle was the actor in it. It
Yeah.
was about Paul Rusesabagina. That
Yeah.
was how most people survived, and
Wow.
so eventually, we left Kigali because it got so dangerous. And the RPF was actually systematically also capturing people, taking them to places and killing them in hiding. The difference between the Hutu extremists and the RPF, the Tutsi extremists, was the RPF was systematic, and they were hiding the people they killed. They put them in mass graves, but they kept it away from the media. The extremist Hutu militias were just throwing the bodies on the streets, and the bodies was piling up, and just like the stench when you went outside, between the decomposing human flesh, the burning structures, the gunpowder, the dust, and everything mixed in. When you got out, you wanted to throw up. So um, we we leave Kigali because the house we were in ended up getting bombed. As we traveled to get away from Kigali, we kept getting stopped at checkpoints. They kept threatening to kill us. At times, they would take us out of the cars. I mean, this little pickup truck that we were in, they would have us on the side of the street. And every single time, somebody would intervene and plead and let us go. At one of the stops, they made me and my mother, they only selected me and my mother. They put me on one side of the street, put her on the other side of the street. They ordered the truck to leave with my two sisters on it and a bunch of other people, a bunch of other strangers that we didn't know. And a guy looks me in the eyes and he goes, "Say goodbye to life." And then they led us away from the street, took us to this little bamboo forest. And as soon as they got us there, and they were armed, with guns and grenades and clubs and all kinds of things. And as soon as they got us to this little bamboo forest, there was a little carpentry shed. A bunch of neighbors ran up, and those neighbors started yelling from a distance, saying, "Hey, don't kill them! Leave them alone! Don't kill those people! Leave them alone!" And then all of a sudden, as they were distracted, the driver comes back. But while they were yelling at those guys, they looked at us and they told me, my mother, go to those people that are yelling at us, borrow some shovels and hoes, and dig your own graves because we have to bury you after we kill you. So as all of this is happening, the driver comes back. He came back and left one guy there. The guy started pleading for us, and he left and came back and he got another person. Both of them were pleading for us. And eventually, after hours and hours, it was like, mid-afternoon when we got to this place. It was pitch black when one of the people who was pleading goes, this boy and his mother are not going to make it 5 miles from here. Let somebody else kill them. Somehow they agreed to that, and we left. And we ended up again sheltering with another family until the RPF came bombing everybody in front of them. And they we ended up pushed into Congo. In Congo, I was homeless, with my mom and my two sisters, but I was relieved to be in Congo instead of being in Rwanda, where you had the threat of the RPF or the threat of the extremist Hutus coming to kill us. So we ended up getting rescued out of the Congo, went to Uganda, Kenya, and then ended up in the US. And I didn't start sharing these experiences until I was inspired by Frederick Douglass, the man in the picture behind me. And um, it was also because of what was happening in the Congo. I was thinking, I really betrayed my wish from that one place where they had us digging our own grave because one of the things that I wish for, one of the things that I felt was I was scared, I was desperate, but the thing that I felt the most was loneliness. I felt lonely. And my wish was that somebody finds out what is actually happening. But then I came to the US and spent years betraying that wish until I read the book of Frederick Douglass. And then, of course, then the Congo, the story of the Congo, which was an extension of the story of Rwanda, which was an extension of the story of Uganda, which is an extension of colonial borders and colonial legacy, led me to start sharing with the major goal being I wanted the world to know what happens to children during during genocides and during mass atrocities and wars. And that's why I continue to insist. Anytime I talk about the Congo, it's an invasion. It's not a rebel group or a M23 supported by Rwanda. It's Rwanda and Uganda invading the Congo and committing genocide and just, labeling themselves. It's like if you had a can of beans and on the can of beans you put something, maybe like a word, let's say it's new. Does it change from being beans? It's still the same. So for me, it was really important that the story of the children in the Congo is told and is heard and is told, like the whole truth is told as it is. Like children being slaves right now, so that we can get smartphones, so that Elon Musk can make his electric vehicles. These lithium batteries. Lithium coming out of the Congo, um, the all these critical minerals, the race for critical minerals during this green revolution now, between the U.S. and the U and China is now part of what's fueling what's happening in the Congo. And the world needs to know that all of us are consumers of what comes out of the Congo, and that we have a responsibility to do something about it. And so, part of this, me sharing the story is to put a human face to what is happening, what happens to the people, what's happening to the people in the Congo. These are not made up stories, but because it's millions of Black people, millions of Africans that are being butchered, the world is ignoring it or making excuses for the perpetrators like Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni. And that goes for these deals that are happening today. I know I heard your introduction, talking about all of these, the current deals, but it goes back 40, almost 45 years now, with Museveni, you know, signing deals and not abiding by the deals. The RPF in Rwanda signed multiple ceasefire deals and multiple. Um, Give me 1 second. Um, the deals in the 90s, even in this conflict, in the Congo wars, in the genocide that's happening in the Congo, the deals of the 2000s that actually brought rebels into the Congolese military. All of these are what we are seeing today. Nothing is actually new. Um, and unfortunately, you know, people have there's the wish for hope, and there's also short memory. Is always this thing where people are like, yeah, this one is going to be different, but the last 20 haven't been different. Why do we expect this one to be different? Why do we expect all of these to be different? By the way, how many are they going to sign before we have a different one? And so, hopefully we'll get to that topic, um, and talk about these peace deals and what can we expect out of them.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. No, thank you so much for like I couldn't even stop myself from, having an emotional reaction because that's just it's people don't understand. I mean, you still smell like, like you were talking about the smell of, gunpowder and the smell and that's something as a child, and bodies, and you just that smell never goes away. And every time I hear, um, you know, another person that's around that's from, our side of the world experiencing this as a child, it always brings, tears and just emotional reaction. So thank you for sharing that. Again, we talk about these things, but having lived it and it's
yeah.
it's a different level. But yes, let's get into these deals. I know, as we mentioned, I thank you for providing that context too, that this has been not just, since 2013, right? But there's been over 40, 45 years of these kinds of deals. And they said, what does Einstein say? The repetition of the same thing is something about insanity. Is
Mhm.
insanity, right? Repeating the same thing is insanity, and which is keeps happening,
Right,
right?
right. Hmm.
So, we go at least from, the Addis Ababa framework, right? 2013, the Luanda, the Nairobi talks, the Doha process, the Dar es Salaam summit, and the Washington deal. So, you emphasize the importance of justice in your work. And we obviously see that most of these deals, um, that's never, included. And so, question for you, like what are the dangers of signing bills like this and that don't center victims or include accountability measures?
um, you said it.
Mhm.
You know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome.
Yep.
And unfortunately, what we have is a repeat of the same thing and expecting a different outcome. We've already experienced peace deals. These so-called peace deals, I mean, I call them peace deals because they haven't turned into, they haven't produced peace. And I also don't think that they are going to work, um, because in order for a deal to work, you have to have willing partners in the deal. Um, so first of all, the fact that justice is not a part of it, the people who are affected are not a part of it. They're just as, they're completely disregarded. Um, that starts. That's a bad start because you can't have peace unless you have justice. Justice is the foundation for peace. And when you write a whole peace deal that has nothing about holding accountable the perpetrators, that is not going to work. I get it. Diplomats sometimes have a way of, trying to like flip the truth on its head by saying that, oh, yeah, we're going to do it diplomatically and we're going to find a diplomatic solution. I, you cannot, it's not going to produce, because first of all, people, the way they commit these atrocities is to keep people in perpetual fear. If you take the tigers and you put them in charge of, or you take the hyenas and you put them in charge of the sheep, what do you think is going to happen to the sheep? And that's basically what's happening. It's like giving people an incentive to actually be violent, to commit all of these violent crimes against humanity, commit genocide, commit mass atrocities, and then be rewarded with, you get amnesty, so you don't go to jail. But somebody down the street, Amani or somebody down the street who stole a chicken is going to jail. Somebody who stole some bananas is going to jail, but somebody who killed, somebody who amputated women's genitals, somebody who tortured, somebody who threw people alive in mass graves gets to walk around and actually become a leader of the people he abused. And when you have a criminal that commits a crime, their next biggest job is to cover up the crime. And so these deals that do not have the victims at the center, the deals that do not have justice at its center, these aren't peace deals. What we have, especially with the Washington deal, is a minerals deal. The way that I describe that deal is what happened with the US. Of course, the Congolese government, the Congolese president went to Trump after the Rwandan militias, the Rwandan army, calling itself the M23, took over Goma and Bukavu. They went to, then Chisekedi went to Trump and asked him, for a deal, minerals for security. Trump, when he saw him, when he saw that appeal, he smelled a deal. And Trump is a deal maker. I mean, I've never seen a person that's got so many beefs with so many people that those beefs end up turning into deals. So anyway, he smells a deal and he's like, yeah, now he plays the parent. I mean, Rwanda is a client state to the U.S. Kagame is their errand boy. He's their mercenary in the region, and Shisekedi has is offering uh, minerals, and so he goes, yeah, children, I need to sleep, like a parent, when you have two children fighting, and it's like, yeah, kids, stop fighting, make peace, and instead of settling what actually is happening, the dispute that's happening, it's like everybody calm down and then go to sleep. So Trump wants everybody to calm down so American companies and his friends can get access to the minerals in the Congo and get a big piece of the pie in this race for critical minerals in the Congo. And so there was already a lot of issues with the deal, starting from one. I mean, how many peace deals or deals has the U.S. just in recent times, instituted or been a part of, and how many of them are actually working out? That's number one. Secondly, how many people have partnered with the U.S. in history, especially when it comes to conflict, that have ended up succeeding? I mean, look at Saddam Hussein. They ended up killing him. Osama bin Laden, they ended up killing him too. These were some of their staunchest and closest allies. Now, we let's take it maybe to another level. And by the way, the US was also a big supporter of apartheid South Africa, and so many other atrocious leaders, or like Mobutu in Congo. But let's just fast forward now, jump to Trump. Trump sold a meme coin to his supporters that's not worth anything. If a person would sell, something to get money and give nothing of value back to his supporters, what do you think is going to happen to you when you come to him and it's like, okay, let me give you some of this value? He's going to give you nothing in return still. That's what he tries to do. And so in the end, the Congo, and I'm not sure why the Congolese government decided at the very last minute, from my understanding, to remove the clause that said Rwandan troops must withdraw with no preconditions from the Congo. And I thought that was the reason why they went to him anyway. But then they removed it. But when that was signed, a lot of Congolese people were upset and hurt and up in arms about it. And I remember being in one conversation, it was a large online conversation with our friends and family, the Congolese friends and family. And I said, there is a big silver lining in what is happening here. The big silver lining is that Kagame never follows any deals that he signs. So this isn't going to work out anyway. That's the big silver lining. Otherwise, it was a terrible deal to sign. And it didn't put the victims were not even a part of it. Justice was not a part of it. And I'm talking about was, because that is a past deal. I honestly do not see much coming out of it. What we've seen since the signing of the deal is that hundreds of only reported, knowing that the reporting is low, the people are under surveillance, the people are under occupation, so they can't report freely. Hundreds of people have been killed since the beginning of the occupation. So when we talk about the deal, the Washington deal, the Doha deal, I mean, what is the difference between that and what was signed in Rwanda, in the Nairobi process, and all of the other deals that were signed over the years in the 2010s, in the 2000s, in the 90s, and none of them have been followed. And this time, the difference is that I guess because there is the U.S. and there is Qatar. Either way, they're not looking for the Congolese people's best interest. They don't have the Congolese people's best interest at heart. And um, I think it's important that we continue to push and make sure the world understands that this genocide that's been unfolding for the last 30 years, that it is deliberate, intentional, and there's a reason why they don't hear about it. And right now, these peace deals, like I said, I just don't see how you bring about peace without justice.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And again, as the great Asada Shakur has stated, nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who are oppressing them. And so, when we're waiting for as Africans, unfortunately, we have this dependency mentality. Nobody's coming to save us. I don't know when we're going to realize that nobody's coming to save us. Um, and that it is up to us. Yes, we should spread awareness, but there's so much going on in the world right now. The Palestinians, they've gotten together, they have mobilized and really advocated for their community. And unfortunately, in the US, despite these protests, as a Congolese, I'm speaking from what I've observed from our diaspora. There's over 60,000 in the US, and trying to even collaborate, everybody wants to do their own thing, and it's not. There's a very small percentage of people actually advocating for the victims. People are trying to get a piece of this deal, right? It's dollar signs. And
Mhm.
so this is the state that we are in, right? And so I would love to just follow up with asking, as we've seen, right, peace deals have come and gone, many signed in foreign capitals, negotiated without the victims at the table. Um, what, in your world, in your viewpoint, would the civil society, how can they push back against this model of elite-driven diplomacy? Because we do see that these deals are being done in complicity with the Congolese government, with these governments, right? The elites at the end of the day. It's not a surprise that our president Tshisekedi is not even having investing in the military, right? He's letting a tiny country like Rwanda just invade. He's going to Europe. He's going to the US, quote unquote, begging for help. And not, it's just, Kinshasa and the East are just completely separate to him, right? Because again, money is the only thing that these people care about. And so, yeah, so just the question of how can civil society push back against this, and how can diaspora communities, what role can diaspora communities play in holding international actors accountable? And what does real African-led peace look like? I know we have 10 minutes left, but those are the questions that I would love to just end with. Thank you.
Yeah, I will add to your Asada Shakur, rest in peace, Asada Shakur. To add to your what you said, the quote, her quote, I'll add the Frederick Douglass quote also that says, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. This is another quote. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never will, it never did, and it never will." And then there's another one that says, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave." So I think the starting point is actually on that very last quote, where part of what have to do is educate, like what you're doing now, is share the knowledge, share the information, open people's eyes, so that we are unfit, so that the world is unfit, and especially that the diaspora is unfit to be a slave, to see this as, let me just play the opportunist in this and try to get me a piece of this deal. And a big part of it is making sure that the knowledge is out there, is also building a groundswell of legitimate support. And I say legitimate because it has to be sincere. What we're seeing, for example, with the Free Palestine movement is people are sincere that are involved. We have to be able to see those who are playing lip service, those who are playing gatekeepers, those who are playing. Um, um, I said lip service. I said gatekeepers, and also those who are playing controlled opposition, which are in some cases wanting to like dilute what is actually happening and minimize what is happening and bring it down to this is a conflict in it's a conflict of Africans killing Africans, tribalism. It is east in the east of Congo. Guess what? Even 1 inch of Congo is an invasion of Congo. All of Congo is invaded when 1 inch is invaded. So, like, I always ask the question, do we know? I don't. So I'll ask you, do you know what side, east, west, south, north, or northeast, southeast, whatever, of the Ukraine that was invaded by Russia?
No.
Does it matter?
No.
The point is, when 1 inch is invaded, that's enough for the whole country to be invaded. And the reference to Eastern Congo, like it's a completely different country,
Right.
is already a way, something that like needs to be educated out of people's minds. A second thing is, as we educate, is being clear about what is happening. I see there's a lot of narrative on Rwanda invading Congo. A lot of times people say, oh, it's the M23 with the support of Rwanda. Again, That's mainstream media's narrative, and mainstream media's narrative has been problematic from day one when it comes to the Congo. The reality is, um, Congo's been invaded. There are international laws against on a country being invaded, and if the world understands that this is an invasion, then people start taking action on holding accountable the invaders. The same way that Russia was treated when they went into the Ukraine, Rwanda and Uganda should be treated that way. The other part is people continue to refer to Rwanda only without talking about Uganda. That's it. That also has to be, it has to be addressed. Like Uganda has to be a part of. That's where it started. It has to be a part of the narrative. The other part is, I think, especially when it comes to the diaspora, understanding the power that the diaspora has. Number one, the diaspora has money, so they can contribute money to the cause and to the fight for justice. They can actually finance a lot of justice related projects, not just humanitarian. I see a lot of people saying, and by the way, another piece of education that's needed, excuse me, for the diaspora is everything is politics. So I see people saying, "Oh, I don't want to talk about politics." Okay, if you talk about Congo, you're already talking about politics because
Yep.
Congo's borders are political.
Yes.
You know, if you're talking about tourism in Congo, you're talking about the roads in Congo. If you're talking about how beautiful, everything is politics. So you might as well just speak on the politics. And also, it's not it's not right. It's actually wrong to know that people are suffering and then cower into your own convenience and comfort, to disregard and not talk about what is happening to those people, the suffering of the people. So if we can make sure that the world understands it. So the diaspora, one, just being engaged, show up and count. Don't you know? Don't keep it all on social media. Definitely use the social media because it's important. It's a way to spread awareness, and it's a way to actually build a narrative. And it's important. But also show up when there is a protest, when there is events. Make put your money where your mouth is. Contribute to causes, contributes to groups like Friends of the Congo and other groups that are doing work for justice in the Congo. Get involved. Tell your neighbors, tell your church, tell your friends, tell your school, tell your member of Congress. Understand that as a diaspora, people who are citizens, they are also voters. So you can approach your members of Congress and organize in your districts and actually lobby. So there's a lot of work that can be done in the diaspora. I agree with you 100%. I don't want to go without making this clear. The Congolese elite have been complicit in this. I mean, right now, Congolese government is not even talking about Uganda being a part of the invaders. And it wasn't until 2022 that they finally admitted that Rwanda was invading. And so everything is like, what are you dragging your feet for? They went and joined the East African community for what? Like to achieve what in the middle of that war? To bring more troops that are hostile to the Congolese? And so with all of that, I did want to make sure that that is clear. But I also want to, I think the diaspora can do a lot in one, educating themselves, educating others, spreading awareness, building a narrative, and keeping this narrative strong and actually making it to where the whole world understands. Congo's been invaded, Congo's occupied, there is a genocide going on in the Congo. Those are three easy things that anybody could understand. And the reason it's happening is for the extraction of resources. Those four things, most people easily understand around the world understand this. And then um, contributing funds to the cause and showing up and doing their part. And then when that happens, because one, with the money and the influence, then that brings about power to actually then hold the elites accountable in spite of themselves, holding them accountable against their own will because they don't want to be held accountable. They want the easiest thing, they want the microwave solutions. That's why we have these deals that we know are not going to work, but they still sell this empty bag of hope to the people. Now, you talk about not being able to build a military and so many different things. There are things in Congo that are are understandably difficult. Um, I do think that yes, Congo should build its military, but having a small country invade you and take over is not that is not a surprise. I mean, look, Israel was bombing Iran not long ago, you know, and the population is much smaller than Iran, even the size of the country. It's not about the size of the country, it's about the size of the supporters. The reason why Rwanda and Uganda are able to do what they do in the Congo is because they have the US, the UK, and the European Union financing them, training them, giving them political cover and diplomatic support, and all of that. That's the only reason. That's why you had a small population, less than 10% in South Africa, able to colonize and put into apartheid and the Bantustans in South Africa. It was a small population that was able to do that. So some of these things we also have to educate and make sure that it's clear and understandable.
Of course, but also the US has backed and the West has backed the Congolese government as well financially. I mean, Mobutu has smuggled, if you look at the data, smuggling had offshore accounts, it's like billions, trillions.
Billions.
It was
Yeah.
it was it was a lot. So we can't just say that they're backing Rwanda, right? They've also backed Congo, but we are at the end of our session.
Yeah.
And just want to end, you're so right about the diaspora backing, financially having the potential, because again, if you look at the remittances, it supersedes foreign aid. We sent $56 billion in 2024 in Africa versus the US allocating 12.7 billion in foreign aid. So
Mhm.
we have the financial capabilities that exceed foreign aid, and it's up to us to save ourselves. Nobody's coming to save us. We are all we got, and it's time we lock in. So thank you so much for sharing your story, Claude. It's been a privilege, and I look forward to connecting again and talking.
Thank you, Jessica. Looking forward to connecting again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Go to freecongo.org. Thank you, and congoweek.com. Thank you.